Hello, my name is Lee Graves Wolf. I'm an assistant professor in educational development with UCD Teaching and Learning, and this is the Research into Teaching and Learning Getting Started workshop. The aim of this workshop is to support those new or in need of a refresher to the concept of the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, or SoTL. The session or this video will provide an introduction to theories, frameworks, methods, and ethics in relation to teaching and learning research. In addition to information resource sharing, there'll be an active component of this virtual workshop for participants to begin to apply these concepts to their own praxis. On completion of this workshop and watching this video, one should be able to demonstrate an understanding of theories, frameworks, methods, and ethical considerations used in teaching and learning research, and to identify innovative areas of your own teaching practice, which could be developed into a research inquiry and focus of study. Over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll be talking about research into teaching, how it's the hardest science of all. We'll do a bit of brainstorming, dig into some of the literature around scholarship of teaching and learning, help to identify opportunities, connect you with communities, talk about ethics, and then look forward to the next video, which is getting published, which will go into more detail about publishing your research in SoTL. So let's start with what is research into teaching. Research into teaching can be designated as an educational or pedagogical research. You may also have seen or heard the term scholarship of teaching and learning being used. SoTL is a term that includes the activity of research into teaching, but it also has a wider context and understanding. And one thing I'd like to make note of is that this slideshow will be available to you in the comments of the video. And the slideshow has embedded hyperlinks throughout, so there are additional resources that you're seeing on screen that will take you to further explorations. And this link here takes you to our teaching and learning webpage, which has a lot more information around getting started into research into teaching and learning. I wanted to share a local example of some of your colleagues here at UCD who have come together to create a metacognition research study and team. And this group here has gotten together to create a website, resources, and associated scholarship around metacognition. So it's a cross-disciplinary team. And it is something that you could think of doing if you're venturing into SoTL work yourself, that it doesn't have to be a solitary endeavor. It's something that you can do with colleagues if you have similar interests across disciplines and working together on a large scale like this, or even starting small with smaller studies. On the screen here, you'll see some books for your virtual backpack. These are all books that we have full access to via UCD Library. And these are, if you were taking a module, let's say, on the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, these might be considered some of the core texts in that module. So they're great ones to bookmark and have in your, like I said, backpack for referencing. So let's talk about educational research being the hardest science of all. On the screen here, you see David Berliner, who is a scholar and academic in education, and he wrote an amazing piece back in 2002 called Educational Research, the Hardest Science of All, and it talks about the messiness of educational research and the challenges that come with trying to research in educational settings, which you can imagine run from inconsistencies from semester to semester, all of the different ways our students come to us and different backgrounds that they've had coming into the classroom, and how that can make research, as we may know it in other contexts, difficult and challenging in the educational setting, but not impossible. One thing to consider and another thing to bookmark as you are endeavoring on researching your teaching practice is thinking of it and embedding it in the social sciences. So Michael Crotty is a scholar, wrote a book called The Foundations of Social Research, Meaning and Perspective in the Research Process. And in it, he lays out sort of the history of social research, not just in education, across the social disciplines, but how important things like epistemology, theoretical perspectives, methodology, and methods are to social sciences research. And it's really important as we're endeavoring in this area, if you have not published in this area before, is to start to wade into epistemology and ontology of understanding how we exist in the world and create knowledge. And we all come to this space with different beliefs on how knowledge is constructed and gained, and none of those are right or wrong. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because if and when you're publishing this work, peer reviewers will be looking for consistencies and transparency around how you're situating knowledge in your work. Are you coming from a positivist perspective, a critical realist, constructionist knowledge? All of these terms, as you start to become familiar with the literature and you start to sort of look for these clues in the literature, you'll start to see them. And if you're not from a philosophical discipline or social sciences discipline, this can feel a bit intimidating potentially. I've worked with people across the spectrum, and even for those that are in social sciences, it can be tricky at times if it's not something that you are comfortable with. So it's something to start to embed and to think about, because that will be something that you will see surfacing as a core piece of the scholarship of teaching and learning. Another thing to think about is research methodology, the design of your research, and how that differs from the word method. Methodology is sort of the design, the overall structure of the research, where the method are the actual procedures that you're using to evaluate, view, and assess what you are looking at and researching. There are two research methodology approaches that are really, really well suited to educational contexts. The first is design-based research, and the second is action research. Both of these methodologies are situated in honoring the complexities of educational context. Both design-based research and action research are very iterative in nature. So you may have an assessment, let's say, that you are working on improving, and that you deliver the assessment, you evaluate it yourself. Did it work? What were the benefits? What were the downsides? Looking at that, say, through either a qualitative or quantitative lens, and then redoing the assessment, relaunching, looking at again, reevaluating. So that is, as you know, in teaching and learning, a very normal, germane way that we operate in educational context. So these two types of methodologies are very, very well suited in educational context. Doesn't mean that you have to use them, but definitely things to consider. And on the screen here, you'll see two more resources for your backpack, one around action research and another around design-based research in education. Another great book to add to your growing bookshelf is Doing Research in Education, a Beginner's Guide, which is a fairly new text from our colleagues in the School of Education here at UCD, Declan Fahy and Shane Bergen. And it's a really well structured text if you are new to research in education that helps guide you through some questions. Another great resource that we have available through UCD Library is the SAGE Research Methods database, and it's a great tool that will help you through some of those things I mentioned earlier in terms of epistemology and ontology, giving you resources for that, finding places to situate your research, finding research paradigms and methodologies, and there's tools and sort of step-by-step toolkits that help you through that process. As researchers, you're very familiar with quantitative and qualitative methods in your own discipline. Quantitative methods being descriptive, experimental, quasi-experimental, casual, correlational, general. Those are all things that can be used in different ways in educational context, as can qualitative methods, techniques like interviewing, focus groups, observation. Document analysis is a great one. We generate a lot of documents as educators, whether they be module descriptors, assignments, texts. Those are all great things that can be analyzed. We can do case studies, ethnography, autoethnographies, phenomenological research, and the list goes on. This is not an exhaustive list. There's also a growing area around critical and post-qualitative research methods, centering around disabilities, centering diverse body minds in our inquiries and research. And post-qualitative inquiry is working towards new methodologies beyond just qualitative methods themselves. So let's take a few minutes here to talk about learning theories and frameworks. If we're looking at teaching and we're looking at learning, there's a whole volume, as you know, of research around learning and learning theories. And those are important to contextualize and anchor your work in the scholarship of teaching and learning. And if this is something new to you or you don't have the background, it can feel extremely overwhelming. This map, which is not intended to be read off the screen, but you can link to, is an attempt by a scholar, Richard Millwood, to map many of the learning theories. These ones in particular are related to technology-enhanced learning, but they cross over across many different types of learning. And you'll start to see terms in here, constructivism, social constructivism, all sorts of learning theories that can start to help give you context and meaning to maybe some of the things that you have seen naturally or observed, and you know that you're seeing patterns, or you know that there's something going on in the way that you're giving an assessment or teaching a certain subject. There's a good chance that has been studied before. So this is a good entry point into finding scholarship that can help you understand and explain to yourself and to others what that learning looks like. Another great resource is the Theory into Practice database. This, again, comes more from the technology side of things, instructional design, but it's a wonderful website that is very brief in sort of overviews of different instructional design and learning theories, and they give you many resources for going beyond that. So it's a nice high-level sort of entry point into learning theories. Many of you are also very familiar with the Universal Design for Learning CAST guidelines. That is another framework that is very, very useful that you can use to situate and explain your techniques of teaching and learning, and a wonderful thing to anchor your work towards when you're thinking about publication in particular, because of the wide studies that have already been done on the UDL guidelines, and you'll have some common sort of language for explaining your work. I would be remiss not to mention some misconceptions that are very common when it comes to teaching and learning, and the first one is learning styles. These have been proven over and over to be used and appropriately in educational contexts. And there's two great resources here, The Myth of Learning Styles and Learning Styles Concepts and Evidence, around being very careful with the way that you're using, if you use the word learning styles, which has come from research to begin with, but has been over the years very, very misconstrued from what it originally started with. Same thing with multiple intelligences theory and grit. These are three concepts that are very frequently misused. So if those are things, of vocabulary that you find yourself using often, it'd be great to come back to these resources just to make sure that you're aligning yourself with the most recent research in that area. So let's take a moment here to brainstorm, and this is where you can pause the recording, move forward, etc. So let's take a minute to list some areas of your teaching and learning practice that interest you. These could be considered or labeled as opportunities, challenges, problems, or possibilities. Think about what aspects of your teaching practice have you found most enjoyable? What positive feedback have you received? And what matters most to you in education? These questions came from that wonderful text from Fahey and Bergen I mentioned earlier, but they're great ways to start that brainstorming process. So you can pause the recording and write some of these down and then come back in a moment. And the next question here is why? What is the why of what you have written? Why do these things interest you? Take another moment to pause and write for a bit. Next, brainstorm as many questions as you can think of that relate to the topic that you have identified. And next, what type of research designs could be well suited for the topic? Is action research something that interests you? Or are you very skilled in quantitative procedures? What designs could be well suited for the topic? All right, let's move on to digging into the literature and what that means. Systematic literature reviews are an excellent way to get started and up to speed on a topic. So you've already brainstormed a couple of ideas there. And if there's one in particular maybe that interests you, you could start down a literature review. What has been done on this topic already? What are other people saying? And systematic literature reviews themselves can be published pieces of scholarship as well. The library has a wonderful introduction guide, and we have a subject area librarian, Susan Boyle, who is amazing and very happy to answer questions if you reach out, and will help guide you towards the different databases and journals beyond maybe what is here in the guide as well. But this is a good one-stop sort of shop to get started. I've listed here a few of the Tier 1, kind of larger research journals in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So the ones listed here are very generic, probably isn't the right word, but they're cross-disciplinary. And beyond these cross-disciplinary journals, almost every discipline you can think of has its own Scholarship of Teaching and Learning journal in that particular discipline. So there's a wide area of outlets and scholarship that can help support your own journeys. So when you're identifying opportunities for starting to research, you can think of many different ways. From a journal article is one outlet, and doing a study, and things do take some time. But there's different ways that you can sort of step into the world of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And the first one might be attending a conference or an education conference. This links out here to an amazing directory that is constantly updated. And again, while it does have the educational technology slant to it, it's education more broadly. And there are global opportunities for sharing your work and process, or at the end, many different levels of entry when it comes to this work. Thinking about sharing your teaching goes beyond traditional sort of academic outlets. There are blogs and even sharing within UCD here. There's many different ways of sharing your scholarship. This is another tremendous guide from the library on scholarly communications, and we'll go into this a bit more in the next workshop about actually publishing the work as well, but I wanted you to know that this guide is available to you. The library has some wonderful training sessions. This link will link out to the latest sessions. There are always, every trimester, workshops on systematic literature reviews if you've never done one before, so a great resource to bookmark as well. There's also this journal I wanted to point out called the National Teaching and Learning Forum. It's a Wiley publication, and it encourages submissions, 1,000-word, 1,500-word submissions that cover a variety of aspects of teaching and learning. It could be just a personal experience and story. It could be a tip that you share. So this one, to me, is a really excellent, very easy entry point into starting to share your scholarship. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have to do this work alone. You can connect with communities. We have the teaching and learning community here at UCD on Google Spaces. This is a wonderful place to get started. There are 500 members and growing across the university, and if you have ideas or need resources, it's a wonderful place to get started. Another place is the Center for the Study of Higher Education. This is a group here at UCD that is looking at interdisciplinary research across not just our university, but higher education broadly. So anyone is welcome to join the center. It's a wonderful space to get started. We also hold monthly webinars throughout the academic year, so another place to bookmark. And I would be very remiss to not mention ethical considerations when you're doing this work. This is a big question we get when we're doing workshops and working with students. There are major ethical considerations, and the UCD Research Ethics website has a tremendous resource about researching with students and the boundaries of doing so. There are things that you have to consider if you are researching your own students or considering doing that, and those ethical considerations are very well laid out. There are standard teaching practices that can be studied. Many people think that the ethical layer is a barrier to doing this work, but I want to assure you that it is not. So there are absolutely ways to research your teaching and learning ethically and within the boundaries of the guidelines that have been laid out. So this is something that will absolutely be possible, but something you have to consider. If you're doing any sort of human subjects research, you need permission. It may be that research is exempt from full ethics approval, but you have to seek that permission as you're considering doing the research itself. So looking forward, there will be another video that you'll be able to review, just like this one, called Getting Published. And that will go a bit more into detail around the publishing process and things to consider. And additionally, throughout the academic year, we will have a few opportunities for in-person workshops that will take your idea. So you need to come to those workshops with an idea ready to workshop with peers, and we will help move forward and answer additional questions in a more concentrated, bespoke way in those workshop opportunities. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you can always reach out if you have questions moving forward. So thank you for your time and attention, and look forward to supporting you along the way.